Fabulous. Okay, so participants are ticking up. Lots of people joining, upwards of a lot of people. So I think that's, yeah, that's great. Okay. Was hearing that some people were having issues with joining, but that is fabulous to see. Okay, great. Brilliant. Oh, wow, the numbers are really ticking up. That's so brilliant. Fabulous. It's really great to have so many of you joining on this Monday afternoon now. Um, as you know, having signed up to this event today, we're going to be talking to some fabulous people working from around the rights division within Penguin Random House and also within the HR team. And this is a virtual version of a panel that we also had in person. So we've all had the pleasure of meeting each other and discussing various things already. And this will hopefully unearth some really interesting conversations as well. I can't wait to see the questions that come from the room and from the crowd. Just going to make sure that you folks also have the ability to ask questions when we get to that portion. So just to let you all know how this is going to work, we're going to have about 40 minutes for panel discussion. Then we will open up the floor for all of you to ask questions directly to the panel. So do have a think as we're going along, and do feel free to submit questions via the Q&A panel. I think somebody's raised their hand. Just want to make sure that people have the option to submit questions. Yes, you should be able to. Perfect. And then when you see a question that you like the sound of, you can also upvote that question by just hitting the hand signal on that question. So if there's one thing that somebody else has written that you really like the sound of and you want that answered, feel free to upvote it. But we will kick off shortly. I'll just give a brief intro just in case anyone's unsure or unaware of who Creative Access is, who's co-hosting this webinar with Penguin Random House. So if you're not already aware, if you have never come into contact with us before or never used us for anything, I'm Ella Darlington. I'm the head of comms and marketing at Creative Access. And if you're unfamiliar with our mission, we are a social enterprise that's all about making the creative industries more representative of what the UK looks like today. That means working with talented individuals such as yourselves who are signed up and wonderful employers like Penguin Random House to offer things like career inspiration, job opportunities, internships, traineeships at all points in your career. And today we're joined by a fabulous team of staffers from Penguin Random House to have the discussion to open up the conversation and reveal more about what exactly rights means in publishing. So we will have time for questions in that final portion. So get thinking and please do submit them as questions come to mind. But let's get going. Let's meet our panelists. So first up, we've got the wonderful Monique Corliss. Do you want to give us a sense of who you are, what you do day to day at Penguin?
Hello. Yeah. Hi, I'm Monique. I head up the translation rights team on the adult side of the business. We have our adult division and we have our children's publishing division. We're a team of 11 territory managers. That means that we sell into specific markets around the world. We also have lovely assistants supporting our work. Our job is to make our books available in as many different forms as possible, in as many different languages and markets, and to essentially maximize the potential of all of the books that we're publishing and generate as much income as possible.
Awesome. And we'll switch over to Claudia. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Penguin Random House.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia. So I sit as part of the HR team, but I have a particular focus on recruitment. So our recruitment team is around 8 people and we're probably hiring 300 to 400 roles a year. So it's a busy job. We see a lot of applications and it's all very exciting. Nice to be here.
Pleasure to have you. And Chloe, tell us a bit about you.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm an assistant in the children's rights team. So I just support on specifically on picture books, but the territory managers will make the deals to have books published in other languages. And as an assistant, I support on the kind of admin of actually making that happen and making those books actually come to life in production.
Absolutely. We're going to have lots of fun talking about the ins and outs of how that actually works as well. And Maeve, tell us about yourself.
Hi everybody, my name's Maeve and I work in the children's rights team with Chloe, and I'm a senior rights manager, and I sell our children's books, which are basically from 6 months right up to 18 years, I guess. And I sell to the markets of France, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Brazil. So selling our books to foreign publishers to publish in those languages. Nice to meet you all.
Yay. And also just to let everyone know, at the bottom of your screen, or if it's your phone that you're dialing in on, there should be a icon there that says CC. If you need to activate closed captions, you can do that yourself. So please feel free to if you would like to. Right, let's get into the discussion. So we know what your roles are, but let's maybe dig into a little bit more about what that means in practice. So, can you also tell us a little bit about how you made it into that role as well? That's very different for everyone who sits on our panel. People are, various different stages in their careers and do slightly different things within rights. But why don't we start with you, Chloe? Why don't you give us a sense of how it is that you arrived at where you are now, and just a little bit more context about how you work with perhaps some of the other folks on this panel.
Sure. This is my first role in publishing. I studied law at university, so I don't really have background in languages or English or anything like that. But I studied law, decided I didn't want to do law, but was really interested in books. So in the meantime, while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I got a job in a bookshop, which really kind of cemented my interest in pursuing publishing as a career. And in that time that I was working in a bookshop, I signed up for the Creative Access Penguin Random House mentorship program, where I was really luckily mentored by a wonderful person from the children's division, which sort of sparked my interest in pursuing children's publishing specifically. So after that mentor relationship, kind of discussed what roles would be suited to me, what I would enjoy, and that's how I landed on rights. And yeah, about 6 months later, I got my first role in publishing, which is this assistant role in rights, and I've been here for almost a year and a half now. And yeah, as I say, I support on the children's rights team. So the territory managers, like Maeve, will make a deal to have a book published in, say, French, and then the part that I do is then take it from that deal making stage and sort out the sort of production elements, the delivery, the shipping, the approvals, and all those kind of admin bits that actually go into making the physical product happen in the end.
And did you have an idea of what rights in publishing was before? And say, you're talking to a 4-year-old or me, how would you summarize what exactly does rights mean in publishing in a
Well,
nutshell?
I didn't have a massive idea of what rights was. I think that part of it came really from the mentorship relationship that I had through Creative Access. I kind of got the opportunity to speak with someone already in the company, dig down into a couple of different roles that I'd heard of but wasn't really sure what they were. And that's how I landed on rights as being something actually really interesting and fun sounding. And I'd say, in a nutshell, rights is getting the brilliant books that Penguin makes into as many languages around the world as possible.
Brilliant. And I'm going to throw that question over how you access the industry, and also if you would add anything to that definition of what rights is. I'm going to come to you, Monique. What would you say?
Hello. So I came into publishing slightly in a diverted way. When I left university, so I studied languages at university. When I left, I knew I wanted to use my languages, but didn't have a career in mind at that point. I started to work at an outdoor advertising company, a French outdoor advertising company, in the sales department. And then after a couple of years of saving some money, I went traveling for a year. And then when I came back, that's when I knew I had to kind of sit down and figure out what I wanted to do. And publishing was, to me, the industry that I was most interested in and wanted to get into. But I wasn't quite sure what department I would be suited to or would want to work in. And actually, I spent some time interviewing for publicity roles as well as rights jobs. But it was over the course of that year when I met more and more people at interview talking about rights, being asked about rights, and just getting a better understanding of what rights involves. That I realised that actually that was the route I wanted to take. So that's what I focused on. And I got a job at PRH at Penguin Random House, or Random House as it was then, as rights assistant. And yeah, I've stayed at the company ever since. We've merged with Penguin in that time, become bigger and better. And it's just as exciting as it ever was. And now I head up the translation team. And then, I mean, in terms of just sort of defining what rights is, just expanding slightly on what Chloe has said, we actually, I mean, my focus is on translation, as is Maeve's and Chloe's. But actually, the team, the adult department, and the children's team as well, we have specialists in all kinds of rights selling. We sell in translation. I focus on German and French sales. My colleagues, we split the territories between us, the whole world. There's someone who specializes on US market, that's their focus, our rights directors. But we also have colleagues who sell books to feature in newspapers and magazines. And that's really kind of like a launch pad for the book. For our publicity teams, that's really when they start to publicize the books and get them out into the open, onto the public's radar. And we have a media team. They sell theatrical, film and television rights. And then we have lots of other domestic rights as well. So we have colleagues who are selling our books to be published in large print, in audio format too, and much else besides.
Amazing. And when we were having the in-person discussion, there were so many revelations that I had about rights that things I wasn't aware of before. It would be good if Maeve, you want to touch on perhaps some of the things that might surprise people to know about the things that you do across the year seasonally. Would it let's focus on some of the things like perhaps location where you might be based across the year, not just this office or your home office, and maybe if there's anything else that might surprise people to know about like the nature of what a year in the role of a rights person looks like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll briefly start with sort of my route into rights. So I did a French and Spanish degree. And just to say, sort of, there's two of us with language degrees here, but it's not a sort of requirement to get into rights. I think that's sort of more maybe a coincidence than anything else. But yes, I did a French and Spanish degree, and as my degree went on, I originally wanted to be an interpreter. That was my sort of plan when I started my degree, and it's really, really hard. So yeah, I sort of started to change my mind about what I wanted to do. And sorry, it's noise of my cats going in and out of the cat bath, if you can hear any sort of funny noises.
so yes, and I just had to think about, what else I could do. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. That was very sort of firm in my mind. And I went to one of those careers courses in my fourth year and spoke to somebody, and she sort of asked what I enjoyed. And I had done English Lit as one of my A levels. And she said, well, have you ever thought about publishing? I know there's an area in publishing where you can use your languages, but sort of on a book basis. And she didn't really have much more information. So I looked into it myself. And the more I looked into rights, the more I liked the sound of it. And so, yes, when I finished my degree, I started to apply for jobs. I couldn't get any. And so I ended up sort of really thinking about how I can improve my office skills and my sort of admin skills and things like that. I worked for an investment trust for a year, absolutely hated it. It convinced me that that was definitely an area I didn't want to work in. And then, yes, I kept on applying, and eventually I got offered a role at Transworld, which is part of Penguin Random House, one of the divisions. And yeah, I started as a rights assistant, and yeah, sort of worked my way through. So yeah, I mean, the day to day of our job, it's I mean, our two sort of busiest periods in the year are the book fairs that we go to. We go to the Bologna Book Fair, which is a children's book fair, in April, and then we go to the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is, I think, the biggest book fair in the world. It's absolutely huge, and you have publishers from all over the world descending on these book fairs. And I meet with all of my customers from the markets that I sell to. We have half an hour slots. We sit at a table, and basically people come to us and we present the books we've got coming over the next few years. And then if our customers like the look of those books, we send them material. There's a lot of sort of email correspondence, phone correspondence. And if they like the books, they make an offer. And yes, and that's when the sort of real rights selling and rights negotiation, and then the deals that we do sort of come into place. So yes, we're sort of mainly based in the office in London, but we've got these book fairs. We also go on sales trips, which are sort of an opportunity to spend a bit longer with our key customers from each market, and all the rights sellers do that. So yeah, it's really helps you get a feel for your customers. You see their offices, you see their bookshelves, what they love, what they're looking for. And also you can go to the bookstores and actually see what is working in each of those markets. So yeah, that's a sort of
so exciting. And when you say customers, what kinds of roles are these types of people that you're having these meetings with?
So they are all editors at foreign publishers. So they are basically looking to buy in titles for their lists. So as well as Penguin Random House, they'll be meeting with all the UK publishers, also publishers from other markets, and yes, they'll also be buying locally, but their editors we're meeting with mainly.
Brilliant. And I guess, is there any advice that you would offer anyone who's at that point where maybe they've done an internship within publishing, or they're really trying to get onto one, they're just trying to break in, they've definitely got a passion for the industry, but they just need that break. What's some really handy advice to offer to someone who's at that point in their career, really wanting to showcase and demonstrate the right things? Perhaps I'll come to Chloe first, and I definitely want to hear Claudia's perspective as well on this.
I would say from an entry level perspective, I have no publishing experience before this. So I sort of just had to do anything that I could do to demonstrate a genuine, sustained interest. And it wasn't just that I was applying for a million random jobs and didn't mind which one I got. I think it did take a long time and a lot of applications and a lot of interviews to finally land this role. So I don't want to make it sound like there's any quick fix to make it happen straight away. But I think over the period of time that I was applying, I was really just taking any opportunity to show my interest. So the job I had in the interim was in bookselling, and I really focused my applications on the areas of book selling that would help me. For example, all the children's book selling I did, I brought that to this interview and demonstrated like a real knowledge of children's publishing. And then the creative access mentorship, when that came up, I was sure to apply for it. Just the meetings and the conversations I had were really valuable. But I think also just being able to say that I'm so interested in the company and in the role that I've done this mentorship, I think that also sort of worked in my favour in being able to show a sustained interest when it came to interviews. So I'd say it's not easy, and there's not like a really quick fix that you can just do and add to your CV that will make it happen straight away. But just if you just have it in your mind with every opportunity that comes up, it is a chance to show an interest, and it's something to use as an example in a cover letter or a CV or an interview. I'd say just take every opportunity, even if it isn't a job, it still looks good, and it will, yeah, I think it will help in the end.
And Claudia, you're coming at this from a completely different perspective. You're someone who, gets to look at CVs, cover letters, candidates, all that sort of thing quite a lot. Are there things that you would pick out that are specific to rights, that are skills that, within the team you would look for, even at entry level, or things that people can demonstrate?
Yeah, I think in fact, my main piece of advice is sort of specific to rights, but sort of not, in that a trap we sometimes see people fall into on their applications, particularly their cover letter, is that you might overemphasize your passion and interest in the publishing industry, or in perhaps the focus area of the role. So, for example, children's or adult, and kind of going to only detail on why you love books that maybe that rights assistant role is working on. And that's really important, and that's fantastic and absolutely a bonus, and we are looking for it. But it's important that that's complemented with a really clear understanding in your application of the skill set that has been listed kind of on the job ad. And it's not necessarily that you need to know loads about rights, but you need to have curiosity to learn and explain that in your letter. And I would say that if you kind of evidence that clear curiosity in a relatively kind of concise and straightforward way, that application might stand out more than someone who has perhaps written 3 or 4 pages sort of enthusing about particular books and so on. So it's that balance between, yes, show the passion part, but show that you've analysed what we're looking for and that you're interested in that skill set as well. I think that rights is an area where you can, like all our jobs, but perhaps especially, it works with so many different parts of the business, and you can learn so much, and there are lots of different facets to it that perhaps people don't immediately see. So that curiosity and that eagerness to learn and to be part of a team, I think, is really important. In terms of kind of the skill set, anything that evidences your attention to detail, your communication, your organizational skills, those fundamentals are really, what we're looking for in terms of that person who might then come and form part of the team and kind of be a real sort of valued contributor. And then probably the last thing I would add is kind of conveying that sense of being a team player and forming relationships. I think that, when thinking about the kind of sales negotiation side of rights is very important. But my top tip is remember the job and the skills as well as the passion for the books.
That's fantastic. I can see Monique and Maeve, you are furiously nodding. Is there anything that you would add?
I mean, I think Claudia and Chloe have covered it pretty much. I do think, though, the point that Claudia made earlier on about sort of showing that you have an understanding of what rights does is really important, because it shows that curiosity that Claudia mentioned, but just that you have a very specific interest, and you will make the effort to find out exactly what it is so that you can talk to it, and just showing that understanding will make a huge difference. So I would say, if you're looking at any part of the business, that's what you should do. And try and talk to as many people as you can, or read up as much as you can. And yeah.
I would also add that, all our departments are busy, but in rights we are incredibly busy, and actually, we're plate spinning a lot of the time. There's an awful lot of, you don't just work on one job and then finish that and move on to the next. Our priorities are shifting all the time. Like in Chloe's role, for instance, she'll be dealing with so many different customers with different urgency sort of levels to their requests. And I think, I would love to see in somebody's application a real ability to sort of work under pressure and work to tight deadlines, and actually to be able to multitask really well.
Yeah, super valid. And I would absolutely echo everything that you've said, but specifically your point, Claudia, around not getting so obsessed with the passion about what's perhaps shiny or what the end product is, but also thinking about what sits behind that, really looking at the job description, the words that are used, the adjectives that are used, and how you can evidence that in anything that you've done, whether it be a retail job that you've had, or a society that you've been part of, or something that you've, proactively headed up, at whichever point you are, when you come to apply. I'm sure that loads of you who are dialed in have also either attended or might be aware or unaware of the CV writing workshops that we have each month. They're totally free to attend, they're virtual. So do make sure that you're signed up or registered with us so that you hear about when that is. We'll also publish them on our social channels as well. So if you're not already following us on Instagram or LinkedIn, please do. But those always get really good feedback in terms of it being a non-stressed group setting, learning from, peer insights, but also our recruitment team who look at literally hundreds of CVs each day. So do sign up to that if you would like to. This is all really good intel, and I'm sure that it's really useful for people. Some folks, I think, asking about are there any mandatories? So I think we spoke about this a little bit when we were in the in-person version of this discussion around, do you need an MA? Do you need to have done a creative writing degree? Should you really be speaking another language if you're working in rights? Are any of those myths? I'll open that all to the floor. Anyone who wants to chime in. I'll pick on you. Go on, Maeve.
I was going to say, I don't think you need an MA. You don't need any of those really, or the creative course. It, to go back to the languages. I was saying earlier, it's not mandatory, but I think it's because we are working mainly with publishers based around the world. I think a natural interest in other cultures, other languages, other not sort of so UK focused as maybe some of our other teams are. I think that is something that runs through all of us, and actually is one of the reasons that we've ended up working in rights. But yes, most of our customers speak absolutely amazing English. So even though I've got my sort of French and Spanish degrees, 99% of the time I'm speaking English. So yeah, that is not essential languages.
Brilliant. And let's get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of the function of rights and other teams that you collaborate with, and what the process looks like. Where do you guys slot in? What decisions are you responsible for making, or the course of a product that you're bringing to market? What are some things that you influence or that you have to have an opinion about? Monique, do you want to kick us off with a bit of a sense of, maybe if we just think about no two products are the same, but in bringing something to market, where does rights slot into that process?
Sure. So we work with most departments in the business. We have particularly close relationships with editorial, and I suppose that's really where our job begins. We're right there at the beginning of the process of assessing the book when it comes in to an editor. It could be a proposal for a non-fiction book, a history book, politics. It could be a novel that's been submitted either directly to the editor or via an agent, and they're assessing it. They're assessing its value. They're assessing whether or not it should be published. Who would the audience be? How successful could they make it? And we read alongside them at that very beginning stage to assess the book's potential in our markets. We have exactly the same kinds of questions, but just internationally. So who would be the readers? Where would we sell the book? There are some books that will work in some markets better than others. For instance, commercial women's fiction is much harder to sell in East Asian markets. That's slightly changing, but that's one challenge. Whereas Germany, for instance, is a really cool market for us for that kind of book. So we'll then sit down. We'll look at previous successes. What are the other books that we sold into those markets? What kind of value did we generate for those books? And so can we use that as a guide to assess the potential for this book? So we talk to editors, and that will then have an impact on what they can offer the author. So it's actually, that is possibly one of the most exciting parts of the job, because we get to read all this new material and we get very, very excited about it most of the time. And it's a huge privilege to be there at that point. But we also work very closely with our contracts team. When we've done a deal, they draft the agreement and get it signed by the publisher. They advise us on terms and conditions. We work closely with our royalties team, who collect all income that's owed to the author and to the business. We work with marketing and publicity. International publishers are really keen to know how we're positioning the book here. What are our publication plans? Because that can often help them formulate a publication plan for their own edition. We work with lots of people outside the business as well. We have close ties with literary scouts who represent international publishers. They report back to those publishers on the books that we're doing. So they're in touch with us to find out what's coming in the next 12 to 24 months. What are we really excited about? So they can report back so that their publishers can respond quickly to that information if speed is needed to get there first. So that's a really important part of our network. Externally, of course, we also deal with publishers directly. We're in touch with them daily, different people, different time zones, every day. And our co-agents as well, who are kind of like, they act as a sort of middleman between some of our publishers in parts of the world where we need that kind of representation and help with reaching publishers or indeed collecting money from them. They help us on that. I think does that cover everything, Maeve? I'm not sure. We work with everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add to that. Yeah, completely agree with all of that, Monique. The only other thing in children's, because we have a lot of illustrated books, and we sell our books to foreign publishers on what we call a co-edition basis. And co-editions are where we print full colour books for the publisher. So rather than them printing locally, we print for them. So they send in their files to us, and then ideally we look to print those books alongside the UK edition. And then you've got, for the UK, rather than maybe a print run of 5,000 copies, you would add on to that a French run of 5,000 copies, an Italian run of 3,000, an American run of 20,000. So you end up, the books sort of per unit are cheaper to print. So because of that, we deal with our production department an awful lot. they give us the prices of, and then we quote our publishers for the cost of actually running that co-edition for them. So yeah, that would be the only other department I would mention. But I think that's specific to departments who work on sort of full colour or four colour books.
And there's a lot of negotiating, um, probably lots of spreadsheets, but you're also really creative in your roles and really insightful. Words that kept coming up when we spoke were, um, you know, you've got to be really good with people. It's all about relationships and following instinct. And you've also got to be like curious as well, like curious about other territories and cultures and things like that. Are there any other qualities that perhaps, Chloe, you would say um, lots of rights people have?
Um, I'd definitely say curiosity and communication are the really big ones. Like I think as we've covered, we're speaking to basically every department in the business. So it's really important to be like really friendly and effective in your communication, know how to like get through to people, and outside of the business as well. Even just at the assistant level, I'm speaking to publishers all over the world every single day. So it's really, really important to have just good people skills, I think, and
Mm,
yeah, and be able to be, I think, adaptable as well. I think Maeve mentioned earlier it is really just like spinning plates and just reprioritizing. Every time an email comes in, it could be something urgent that needs to completely shift your to-do list for the day. Sorry. So I do think that just adaptability and just, yeah, being a good communicator are the key ones, I'd say.
brilliant. And is anything ever challenging? Like obviously it's everything sounds awesome. You're going to Frankfurt, you're going to Korea, you're speaking French for some of your clients. It all sounds very glam, but are there ever challenges that you need to get over? And what are perhaps some examples of those? You don't need to go into like heaps of detail, but maybe just some things that come up that you have to navigate. Maybe Maeve?
Yes, I mean, sometimes we do have to sort of deliver bad news to people. For instance, you may have multiple publishers from a market offering from a book. They want to be the French or the Italian publisher, and you know, only one person is going to be successful. So
Mm,
you need to sort of diplomatically, but and collaboratively, sort of say no to people or give them bad news. Um, we also, like any job, sort of unforeseen circumstances can happen. We are organising, as I say, printings of books. They're being shipped all over the world. At the moment, we've got the sort of, the crisis with the Suez, and sort of freight times are being delayed. So, we have to report that back, sometimes to say, I'm sorry, you were expecting your books on this date, but they're going to be, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later than you expected. So I think it's sort of, there's a lot of keeping calm as well, and also just remembering, as we said, it's all about relationships, and
mm,
just making sure that you are sort of continuing that relationship, whatever sort of happens.
brilliant. We have entered the realm of questions now. So I'm going to put some to the panel. One kind of links on to the last point, really. Someone asking, can you give an example of a really busy day where you're working under pressure? Um, Surely there's no pressure in this job. It all sounds really glam. What would you say, Monique?
I think it comes back to what Chloe and Maeve and Claudia have already mentioned about just being having to respond to things, very many
Mm,
different things, all in one day. And it's not even just, you're getting a flood of emails from people who all need different things from you. But you also have a team around you who also have their own needs, and they'll have questions. There'll be other departments who are also have demands, and we need to give them an answer on our thoughts on particular books. What's our strategy? Authors might be asking us for strategy around how we're submitting their books, or what has been the response to their books in any one market. We're having to respond to them, and sort of re-emphasizing how committed we are to what we're doing to them. And then we have a lot of meetings where we're meeting with each other, brainstorming, talking about looking ahead at what the next 6 months looks like, or the next 2 months. We're planning events regularly, such as events around the London Book Fair, where we're going to be meeting with authors and celebrating them. And all of this takes a lot of, just actually last week, we hosted a fantastic author day. We had a group of authors come in at different time slots to present to us as a team from across the business, so that we could learn a bit more about, we work in different teams, and we're very focused on what we're doing in our team. But there's lots going on outside in the wider department that we might not be engaged with because it's not directly related to us. So it was a really good opportunity just to see what books are being published across the company that our colleagues are working on. And we can be excited for them too. And it was a fantastic day, but it took a lot of organising. There was quite a few of us who were caretaking authors, interviewing them to kind of get the best from them. So that obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of that kind of organising. So I'd say, it is exciting, but there's a lot to do all the time. You just have to kind of keep an eye on all of it.
Brilliant. That day sounds absolutely fascinating, just getting to talk about books and hearing about stories all day.
It was
Absolute
a
dream.
privilege. Yeah, it was great. Really good fun.
There's a specific question for Chloe, with an interest on understanding how long it was from you graduating to finding your first role in publishing. And as you quite rightly said, it wasn't, quick, easy route. This wasn't the first thing that you applied for, right?
Yeah, so just for a timeline, I graduated towards the end of 2020. I was already working in a part-time retail job at a supermarket just throughout university. So obviously this was peak COVID, so I wasn't really, a lot of places weren't hiring during that time. There were a lot of furloughs and redundancies made during that time. So a lot of companies weren't really big on hiring. So I stayed in that sort of supermarket role for a couple more months until I sort of decided that I was going to pursue publishing. And I thought, as an interim for that, I was applying for jobs in bookshops. So I worked in a bookshop as a assistant manager for almost a year, and then I joined Penguin towards the end of 2022, summer 2022. So yeah, it was about 2 years from graduating uni to getting this role in publishing, and that involved about a year of knowing that I wanted to work in publishing, specifically applying actively for about a year for publishing jobs, and spending 6 months doing the mentorship program. So it wasn't quick at all. And I know that sounds quite discouraging. I know people that have gotten jobs a lot quicker than that. And then some people, I'm sure, in this event right now will have been applying for the same amount of time, if not longer. It really just is a case of keeping at it, spending the time that you are applying. Yeah, also just really getting to know the roles that you're interested in. And yeah, as Claudia said, really focusing on the skills, maybe getting another job as I did in the interim, that would allow you to show that you have those skills.
And it can be quite a common story, where we've hosted quite a lot of panels with our publishing partners, and I remember some conversations during Work in Publishing Week last year in October. It was very frequent that people had come directly from a book retail background, and really gained invaluable insights about what people are buying, why, and having an opinion and something to say. So I think that's quite a common story actually. Um, One question that I'm going to point at Claudia, is around hybrid working, or part-time, at Penguin Random House. This is coming from someone who's thinking about this specifically, with a disability adjustment, in mind. So just asking what's the setup like, and just being able to support those individuals who might have to request reasonable adjustments or hybrid working because of a disability.
Just coming off mute. Yes, so we're absolutely open to hybrid working. We do it all the time. Same thing with part-time. We have a lot of colleagues who might be working only certain hours per week. In terms of making sure that everybody is supported in the right way, we use the tailored adjustment plan process. So as part of someone's onboarding, when the sort of new joiner notification comes through, the manager is sort of automatically reminded to consider, oh, shall we think about a tailored adjustment conversation, and depending on the outcome of that, putting a plan in place. And that plan is dependent very much on the individual and also on the role. And so for some roles, that might involve perhaps more time that is pre-agreed working from home. It might involve thinking about hours and whether that role can be successfully fulfilled with those adjustments around hours. And I think if the answer is yes, the role can be done with keyword reasonable sort of accommodations adjustments, and as a business that's something that we absolutely look to support, and in fact it's our duty to support that. In terms of our policy as a business overall, we don't have any company-wide sort of mandate on days in the office. That said, almost all of our contracts, with a kind of very, very small handful of exceptions, are contracted to an office location. So I suppose that means the default is you're in an office, but in practice, actually, most teams, I would say, range between 2, 3, 4 days a week in the office. I'm actually not sure whether the rights department have a sort of convention on days it sort of normally in the office. Is there a guideline for rights?
It's sort of, we follow the guidelines, the wider company, to be honest. So the requirement is that we're in for key meetings, and those meetings are generally in person. We also operate in a hybrid way, but in general, meetings that are in person are in person, and that tends to mean that many of us are in 2 to 3 days a week.
That makes sense. I think most departments do it similarly. The only thing I would add, kind of unless there are further follow-up questions, is the tailored adjustment plan is perhaps once someone has accepted the job with us through the recruitment process. Reasonable adjustments are also really important, and you can opt into our disability confidence scheme on application. We do see high volumes of candidates opting in, which match the high volumes for the application. So, if we've received 400 applications for a role, we might have 50 people who've opted in to the disability confidence scheme. And so we won't be able to guarantee all of those 50 an interview because there just aren't enough kind of interviews to go around. So that's one caveat there, but we take sort of reviewing that very seriously. And then in terms of perhaps interview questions in advance, or additional time for a task, or any other adjustment that may be helpful, that's something which as a business and as a recruitment team especially, we're very aware of and very comfortable to handle.
Absolutely. And it's a question that we get often at Creative Access, when we have recruitment roles, roles that we're recruiting for. And as well as having a section on our website that specifically talks about reasonable adjustments, which I would definitely recommend that you head to, just as an example of what that process can look like, right from you learn about the job to applying and having the interview and so on and so forth, which really marries up with what you're saying, Claudia. But also, disclosure is a really personal thing, isn't it? But if something would benefit you either in the interview process or when you're starting your job, like a reasonable adjustment, we'd absolutely encourage you to do so. So we understand that it can be personal, but if it's going to benefit you and make things better all round, then absolutely we would encourage you to do so. Um, we've covered some of these before about qualities and things like that. Chloe gave a fantastic answer to what to expect once you graduate. Um, this is a really common question that we get. Be really interested to see what everyone has to say on this. Dealing with rejection, and specifically with the, publishing industry, because there can be scarcity of jobs. It's a really attractive space and people really romanticize it. But it does mean that the volume of applications is really high, which also means that perhaps, there's lots of rejection as well. Anyone got any tips or recommendations around if you are dealing with rejection, how to like keep going, keep the faith, or just what worked for you?
I mean, I guess my response would be don't give up, keep going. I don't know if that feels a bit weak, because ultimately, I, it can be a longer process actually trying to secure that job. But I think
Mm,
the more you interview, the more people you meet and talk to, the stronger the stronger a candidate you become, because you just start to understand all that much more about the industry that you're trying for and the department that you're going for as well. So um, I think eventually you will get there. It's just it is tough, but I don't think that should in any way, shape, or form put you off. And a lot of the time, it, it is there's a personal connection between interviewer and interviewee, and so there will always be someone out there for
hmm
you. It's um, and just never really try your utmost not to take anything too personally. I think ultimately your passion and your enthusiasm for the job is what's going to matter, and that will shine through.
The other
Definitely.
thing I would add, and I agree with all of that, I suppose a slightly different path as well is there might not be sort of one right answer, like there's not one definition of
Mm,
success. And this is perhaps a dispiriting example, but if you take me, I get to work across all of our publishing houses, across all sort of functions. I work very closely with editorial as well as sales, marketing, publicity, rights. And I've done that through actually specializing in something a bit different, which is recruitment, and then finding my way back to a company that aligns with my interests. So that might be, plan C or D for you at the moment. But I think kind of alongside that, real focus on kind of what you want and kind of being really specific about that interest and giving everything you can for as long as you can, to pursuing that. If like Chloe said, you have a job alongside, which is almost certainly a necessity, that job, firstly it will strengthen your application because you'll be building the skill set, even if not specialist experience, kind of for a role perhaps at Penguin, perhaps in the rights team. But you might find that job turns into something else that then allows you to segue back to publishing later. So as I say, that's probably not plan A, but it can be a really fantastic fulfilling route, and so I try to reframe everything as kind of part of the journey rather than a point at which you failed because you haven't. And it really is, very true that sometimes we'll have 1,200 applications for one job, and that is just not personal. If you're not the one candidate that has ended up being selected, it is just very, very ridiculous numbers.
mm. We've got that's brilliant. We've got a question that we did actually have in the in-person session, which I think is quite interesting. And then right before the end, I'm going to ask everyone to make a book recommendation like I did last time because I love that. So do have a think. This question is around thinking about candidates that have experience in other parts of publishing, say editorial, besides rights, but you're very interested in rights. what would you say around how you structure your cover letter, or tips or things to avoid or things to play up, in terms of what you've gathered or gained from another department? Is there any advice that you'd offer? I think there were a lot of people that were sat in our audience who were in a similar situation. They either came from editorial or sales. Any advice on that front about transferable skills and spotlighting yourself?
I mean, for me, I would say sort of explaining in your cover letter why you want to make the move to rights. I
Mm.
mean, as we've covered in our discussions, there are elements for it, there's so much in rights that relates to other parts of the business. So, there'll be skills that you need working in editorial. There's definitely, we are a sales team. We're just not a UK sales team. So, that's more skills. And I think it's just showing us in your cover letters sort of why you want to make the move to rights, and then how you can use those skills in, and how they match with the required skills in the role being advertised. And I just love to see people as well who are self-starters. They're really motivated, they use their initiative. And I think just sort of examples of those as well, sort of that you've gleaned from, or you have experience in from previous roles.
Awesome. Perfect answer. I'm right. Finally, and people might need to, well, we've got a final minute. Everyone chime in with your book recommendation that everyone absolutely must read. Chloe.
Um, I think I will go for one that we've worked on from the children's side. Um, I think everyone should read Girl Goddess Queen by B. Fitzgerald. It is a like Hades and Persephone myth retelling, but it's just so funny, so punchy, so modern, and B is wonderful. And working on a sequel as well. So I think read Girl Goddess Queen, and then you'll be ready for the next one. Yeah.
Exciting. Claudia.
I was just looking it up. I don't think it's Penguin, but it's Trevor Noah's memoir autobiography, Born a Crime. I just
Nice.
absolutely love it. I've just listened to it for the second time.
Oh, amazing. Maeve?
I would recommend a book that we've been working on a lot. It's not published yet, it's coming out in March. It's called The Whisperwicks, The Labyrinth of the Lost and Found, by Jordan Lees. We've sold that in, I think it's 13 languages so far, but it's a real
Wow.
sort of middle grade, excellent Philip Pullman-esque adventure story. Look out for it.
Ooh, love that film and Philip Pullman comparison. Monique.
I'm going to mention a book that we're publishing in March, that we've also been working on. It's an upmarket or commercial upmarket women's novel about four women who are in abusive relationships. It is actually meant to be kind of uplifting and lighthearted, but there's kind of quite serious themes at the heart. So four women who have been in abusive relationships, and one way or another, they've plotted to kill their husbands because it's the only way out. And they help each other both in trying to dispose of the bodies, but also as a kind of become a kind of a sort of group of strength, to kind of get each other through these really dark times. It's called The Best Way to Bury Your Husband by Alexia.
Ah,
And yeah, we're publishing in March, and it's very funny, quite dark, but not too dark. By the way, this all happens during COVID, which is also why it's kind
oh,
of
wow.
even more kind of claustrophobic, the life that they're living. And there are some really unexpected twists and turns, and some brilliant characters who make an appearance. So yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Oh my God, that's left me so excited. I was just noting all of those down as well. All that's left to say is a huge, huge thank you to you, Monique, Claudia, Maeve, Chloe, for joining us today, and sharing your insights around rights. Hopefully, everyone's leaving with way more information than they had about rights before they joined, and a completely different perspective. Um, as I say, please make sure you're registered with Creative Access. That means that you get access to hear about when our mentor program with Penguin Random House opens up later on this year, as well as live roles opportunities, CV writing workshops, anything and everything, masterclasses, all the above. each week in your inbox. So please do, and also follow us on social medias. We're on each of the social channels that you can imagine we are. So please do Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter/X, TikTok. But yeah, have a fabulous rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. It's been our absolute pleasure. We'll be sending a feedback form out in the email, as well as a bit of a write-up, the recording link, and a few other bits and bobs. So thanks so much and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.